Hi boys and girls, so right now we're working on Unit 2, Lesson 1B, and the learning target is I can calculate slope for a set of coordinates or given points on a coordinate plane by finding the difference of the y and x coordinates. So we've seen this a little bit in Lesson 1A, but this whole lesson will now be practicing using the slope formula. That's y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. So we're going to first practice what we did the last lesson, which was finding the slope using rise over run. So when you have a graph and you have to find the slope, the formula is m equals rise over run. So we know that this slope is going to be a positive slope because it's moving up from left to right. Okay? So now we just need to find the rise over the run. So we draw a path and we have to create a triangle. So we go over to where B is and go up. So our rise has a jump of 1. Our run has a jump of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So our rise is 1 over our run of 5, which is answer choice C. Once you knew your slope was positive, you could have crossed out answer choices B and D because they're negative. So you would have been left with a 50-50 shot determining the slope, and then you'd see that C is your answer. So part B is telling us to pick another point that is on the line and calculate the slope again. So when you're picking a point, you want to choose a point that is a perfect point. Like we're not going to choose something right here because it's in the middle of a box and we can never determine what that actual number is. We're not going to choose this point. Again, it's in the middle of a box. So the next perfect point we find is right here. It's in the corner of two boxes where they intersect. So we have to find the slope now from B to this new point, which I'll name C. So again, we create a triangle to count the rise over the run. I'm going to use a different color. So the rise is 1, the run is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So our slope formula again is m equals rise over run. And our rise is 1, and our run is 5. And it ends up being the same exact slope as from A to B. And that is one way you always can check your work because any line will have the same slope from any 2 points. So no matter what 2 points you found the slope from on this line, it will always have a slope of 1/5. Now, what are the coordinate points of point A and point B? So remember, when you're naming a coordinate, it's always x, then y. So think of the alphabet, x comes before y. And you always start from the origin, it's like a game. And you're going to say, okay, where on the x-axis do I need to go to? So you go over to -7. So for point A, our x-coordinate is -7. And then you have to go up to 4 for the y. So point A is -7, 4. And then point B is going to, again, start from the origin. You go over to -2. And then you go up to 5. And that's your x and y coordinate. And then if we wanted to name C, it goes from the origin over to +3 on the x-axis. And then it goes up to +6 on the y. And can you use the coordinates to find the slope of the line? Yes, we can use the coordinates to find the slope of the line. So whenever you're given coordinates, instead of a graph, you use the formula m equals y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. So I like to say the first step is when I'm trying to find the slope of coordinates, it is to, 1, label everything. So I need to pick 2 coordinates. So I'm going to stick with A and B. And you have to label all of your coordinates with variables, so you know where to substitute into the into the equation. So negative 7, 4 is your first coordinate. So negative 7 is your first x, so that's x1. And 4 is your first y, so that's y1. Then you have negative 2, 5 is your second coordinate, so negative 2 is your x2, and 5 is your y2. So my first step was to label, we did that. Now my second step is to set up. And what I mean by set up is the slope formula always has the subtraction sign, the division sign, and the subtraction sign. So I like to set that up so I never forget to put my negatives there, my subtraction signs, my division sign. And now all I have to do is part number 3, substitute. My third step is to just substitute everything into where it goes. So I look for y2, whatever is labeled y2, which is 5, and I put that where y2 goes. Then I look for now y1. That's given by 4, so I replace that wherever 4 is. Then I am going to now look for x2, which is labeled negative 2. And then I'm going to look for whatever is labeled x1, which is negative 7, so I have to put in negative 7 in for there. So even though that subtraction sign was there, that's a subtraction sign. When you're substituting in, if the number is negative, you have to put another negative in. We know that when we have a double negative, it becomes a positive. So you guys can type this right into your calculator as is and do 5 minus 4 in the with the fraction button, and then divide it by 2 plus 7. Negative 2, I'm sorry, negative 2 plus 7. And you will get 1/5, which is the same answer as the slope as finding using rise over run. So no matter what method you use, it does not matter, because if it's the same line, the slope will always solve for the same amount. Okay? So whenever you have this equation using 2 points, first step is to label everything, then to set up, and then to substitute. So this page is just a checklist. So the slope of a curve is always changing. It's nonlinear. So we can never solve for the slope of this type of graph, nor this type of graph. We only can find the slope of lines, which are linear. The slope of a straight line doesn't change. So this, we have our positive slope because it's going up from left to right. Here we have our negative slope because it's going down from left to right. Here we have our zero slope. Think of a treadmill. When you get on a treadmill, you start walking on it, and it's at 0. So unless you start moving it up or down, the slope does not change. And an undefined slope, we think of Spider-Man. We cannot walk on walls like Spider-Man. We cannot define the slope of a straight wall, a straight line that is completely up and down. So a zero slope is a horizontal line, and an undefined slope is a vertical line. And this is Slope Man. So Slope Man, he has his eyebrows are the lines, and his eye on this side is a negative, and showing that the line goes down from left to right. His right eye is a positive sign, showing that this line is going up from left to right. This vertical line shows that the nose has a U for undefined, and then his mouth is a horizontal line, and his dimples are zeros, showing that a horizontal line has 0 slope. Also, a trick is to remember that horizontal lines have a slope of 0, is that there is an O in horizontal, just like there is in 0. Okay, again, here's a little checklist, and we're going to practice. All right, so using the slope formula when given 2 points on the line, to find the slope, find the ratio of the change in y, which is the vertical change, to the change in x, which is the horizontal change. So when we mean change, that means subtraction, okay? Whenever you're subtracting, you're finding the change between two given points. So we're going to here compare how we found the slope of this line from a graph to now how we're going to solve for it using 2 points. Okay, so we have this example. We're going to use the slope formula of m equals y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1 because we have 2 points. So our first step is to label everything. So 2 is x1, 3 is y1, 4 is x2, 6 is y2. So a little hint, remember, this is the most backwards equation ever. You have y's before x's and 2 comes before 1. So after we label, our second step is to set up. You always want to set up your subtraction, division, and subtraction. And then your third step is to substitute. So when you substitute, you're just going to replace every variable with the number that you labeled it. So y2 is 6, y1 is 3, x2 is 4, and x1 is 2. When you type this into the calculator, you'll get 3 over 2, which is the same as the slope when we solved on the graph, and that would be correct. So the next one, we have to find the slope of the graph, and then we're going to find the slope of the line using the points. So find the slope of the line graph. We're first going to check if it's going to be a positive or negative slope. So from left to right, when you follow the graph, it's going down. So therefore, as it moves down, it's negative. So we're going to write our slope formula and right off the bat, put our negative sign. So m equals rise over run because we have a graph. And we put the negative sign. Now we have to find the slope. So we're going to go create our path. And we have our rise. Let's count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Over our run. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Remember, every box is a jump. And when you simplify this, you'll get -2. Remember, we always want to write slope as an integer or an improper fraction. You're never going to write slope as a decimal, and you're never going to write it as a mixed number. Okay, so if it could simplify to an integer, you can do that. Now we have to find the slope of the line graphed using the slope formula. So in order to use this, we need to find 2 points. So we are going to use A and B. A, we have to write the coordinate from. So we start at 0. A's coordinate is -5, 4. And B is, it does not move on the x-axis. So the x coordinate is 0, since it stays on the x-axis at 0. And it just goes down to the y, which is -6. So now we have to label our coordinates. We have -5 is x1, 4 is y1, 0 is x2, -6 is y2. Now we are going to set up our equation, negative sign, division sign, and negative sign. We have to substitute -6 in for y2, minus y1 is 4. Then we have x2 is 0, minus -5 is x1. When you type that into the calculator, you get a slope of -2, which shows the slopes are the same no matter which method you use. Okay? So again, for this one, we're going to compare finding the slope of a line using rise over run to the slope of a line using m equals y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. So again, start by always determining when you're going to use rise over run if this slope is positive or negative. So from left to right, it moves down. So it is negative. So therefore, we're going to write m equals rise over run, and right away put the negative sign. Now we're going to find our slope. Our rise is 2. It's always the side that's vertical, going up and down. Think of an elevator rises. And our run is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And when you simplify this, you get negative 1 over 4, which is your slope. Now, in order to find the slope of the line graphed using the slope formula, we need our 2 points. So A is negative 9, positive 9. And B is negative 1, 7. Go over to negative 1 on the x, up to 7. You label x1, y1, x2, y2. Now we finished labeling, now we set up subtraction, division, subtraction. You're going to substitute now. y2 is replaced with 7, and y1 is replaced with 9. Then you have in the denominator, x2 is replaced by negative 1, and x1 is replaced by negative 9. When you type this into the calculator, you will get negative 1/4, which again is the same because no matter which method you use, if it's the same line, the slope will always be the same. So the slope's the same. Yes. Okay, go ahead and try these on your own. All right, so let's check your work. We have 4-1, we have to label x1, y1, and for 13-1, we have x2 and y2. We have our formula, m equals y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. When you substitute it in, you should have had 1 minus 1 over 13 minus 4. When you are simplifying this, 1 minus 1 is 0, and 13 minus 4 is 9. When you have 0 in the numerator, it's saying 0 divided by 9. 0 cannot be divided by any number, and therefore the answer is always going to be 0. So if 0 is in the numerator, and you have 0 divided by a number, your answer will be 0. But if you just type this whole thing into the calculator, you will get in the calculator 0. So your answer should be a 0 slope, which is a horizontal line. The next problem, we have x1, y1, x2, y2. When you substitute it into the equation, you should have negative 8 minus 2 divided by 3 minus 2. When you type that into the calculator, you will get negative 10. For the fast finishers, please do these as well if you haven't, and then come check your work. But we should label everything. So 4 is x1, 3 is y1, this 4 is x2, and 10 is y2. When you substitute into the equation, you have 10 minus 3 divided by 4 minus 4. When you type that into your calculator, you're going to get divided by 0 error. That's because no number can be divided by 0. We cannot figure out how many times 0 is in a number. So since we cannot calculate it, the slope that we cannot calculate either is an undefined slope. So the answer would be undefined. That's a vertical line, has an undefined slope. So if you type it into the calculator and get divide by 0 error, your answer is undefined. If you type it into the calculator and you get a 0, the answer is 0. Those are two different lines. 0 is a horizontal line and undefined is a vertical line. And for the last one, we have negative 2 is x1, negative 5 is y1, negative 3 is x2, and negative 7 is y2. When you substitute into the equation, you have negative 7 minus a negative 5, and then you have negative 3 minus a negative 2. When you type that into the calculator, you get a slope of 2. Okay, let's go on to the next slide. All right, let's start by graphing this together. We have our A is 5, 4, and our B is negative 5, 4. So you go over to negative 5, down to negative 4. When you draw a line, try to use a ruler, and also make sure you always have arrows on the ends of each line, of each side. Otherwise, it will not be considered a line. So make sure you include them. And so we have graphed the line using the coordinate. Now we're going to find the slope using slope formula. So 5 is x1, 4 is y1, negative 5 is x2, negative 4 is y2. We're going to set up our equation. So now we have subtraction divided by subtraction. Substitute in negative 4 for y2, substitute in 4 for y1, substitute negative 5 in for x2, and 5 for x1. When you substitute that into the calculator, you're going to get, you have negative 8 divided by negative 10, which simplifies to 4/5. Now, we have to find it using the slope formula. We know that this is a positive slope because from left to right, it is going up. So now we're going to use the graph formula, which is rise over run. So we have to calculate and create our path. So we go over to A and up to A, and we count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And then we count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Oops. Did I do something wrong here? Yes, I did. Skaggy messed up one of the points. So we're going to recreate A. I went 1 point too up, 1 point too many. So we have A is at 5, 4, which should be here. So obviously our line now is off, but we will now create our path to that point. So our run is 10, and our rise is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So our rise over our run is 8 over 10, which simplifies to 4/5, which is the same. Okay, so for this one, please try this on your own and then check your work. Okay, so for the first one, we have x1 is 3, y1 is 4, x2 is 5, and y2 is negative 4. When you substitute it into the equation, you have negative 4 minus 4 divided by 5 minus 3, which is negative 2. In the second equation, after you label x1, y1, x2, y2, you have negative 2 minus 7 divided by negative 9 minus negative 9. When you type this into the calculator, you get divide by 0 error, which is a slope that is undefined. So that is your answer for that one. For the next one, do these lines graphed have a positive or negative slope? So when we look at them, you always look at lines on a graph the way you would read, as from left to right. They both have a positive slope because they're going up from left to right. So that means they are increasing. So we can write they're increasing from left to right would be your answer.